Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the KeyZ Method. As you know, I am super excited to bring another episode, and I'm here with my good friend, Adam Mandell. He's been practicing law for, I believe, the past 15 years, and you're practicing here in Austin, Texas, entertainment law. And I don't want to, this is that legal stuff. So, you got to be careful. So I don't want to explain the wrong thing a little bit too much. But Adam, thank you for joining the KeyZ Method, and just give a little bit explanation of what you do and what you practice in the entertainment. Thank you for joining the KeyZ Method.
Sure. Well, thanks, Kris, for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. I am in Austin, Texas. I'm a lawyer. I practice with a law firm that's based in Virginia. I do music entertainment law and intellectual property as well. So that's things like copyrights and trademarks. Let's see, I've been in Austin for over 8 years. And what I do for the most part is help artists and companies in the music business, whether it's record deals or publishing deals or copyright issues, infringement issues. Sometimes I do live entertainment work, so like work with festivals to make sure that they have gotten everything they need to produce their festival in the right way. I do also a lot of trademark work, so if you're trying to register a trademark, if you have a brand name, if you're selling shirts or anything, any other kind of good or service that you want to brand, I do a lot of that work as well. So, but I'm happy to be here again and see if I can, help people along in the early or middle or late stages of their careers.
Absolutely, man. So let's just break all this down for somebody that say early on in their career. So what does all of that mean? Is any of this stuff even important? I just want to create music and release it. Do I what's the first step? Because, a lot of this stuff, I've been doing it for a while, but I can't lie, it can be a little bit intimidating just jumping in, because you hear so many things like, oh, this could happen. And you do want to protect yourself. I think anybody who's creating music kind of wants to protect themselves. They might not know how to or what to do. Mm-hmm. But so just for somebody starting out, like, what does copyright mean? Trademarking mean? Is that something that they should do starting out? Or is this for everybody?
Sure. So the first thing, that I like to explain to new artists is understanding what it is that you've got, what it is that you're creating, what are the underlining legal aspects of what you're doing. And in music, I would say that probably the most important or most significant form of intellectual property is going to be your copyrights. And in music in particular, it's a little bit unique. There are two sort of separate copyrights that you need to be aware of. The first is the song or the composition, and that's like the music and the lyrics. So the melody, all the lyrics, even some portions of the arrangement, that's one side of things. Mm-hmm. And then there's the copyright in the sound recording. So they're really two different copyrights. And when you're producing music, as soon as you fix the music in what we call a tangible medium, you're actually obtaining rights, federal copyrights in what you've created. So you can protect it as soon as it's fixed. One thing that's very significant in the protection of your copyrights is registration before the U.S. Copyright Office. So you don't have to take the step of registration, but it's very significant because, for one thing, you can't sue now on a copyright unless you have registered it. So you always are going to have to register it at some point. But even more significant than that is that if you register it in certain cases before the work is infringed, your ability to obtain higher or elevated types of monetary damages are there. And so it's very important that you do it as soon as reasonably possible. So I'm not suggesting, as soon as you, the moment that you lay down a new track, or the minute that you bounce onto stereo some session file that you're working on, you don't have to log. It shouldn't be the next step necessarily to log on to the Copyright Office's website and file. But if you're pitching it to a manager, or you're, certainly if you're submitting a demo to a label, it's a good idea to before you do that, take a deep breath and maybe take 10 songs and 10 recordings and file a copyright application before the Copyright Office. It's fairly inexpensive. Kris, you and I have been through this, and you can do a group registration of unpublished works for $85 government fee. Legal fees, can be higher, but they're not super significant. And what I like to help people with is to sort of give people a general idea about how to do it so that they can do it for themselves without my help. It's not a super complicated system once you understand and can navigate the U.S. Copyright Office.
So this is something that eventually all independent artists need to be familiar with, and it's something that they can do on their own once they learn the process.
I think it's certainly something that they should be aware of. And, not everybody has the wherewithal to understand. I mean, the government, I say it's easy, but of course I've been doing it for 15 years and I do it, but I am, this is, and look, as a lawyer, we're not, you might be surprised to know that we're not, we don't love it when people do things for themselves. We want people to hire us. But this is one area, if I can think of a few, things where, really consumers or, artists, I say consumers of government services, they can probably do this, artists can do this themselves and cut out paying super high legal fees. I mean, as an example, like I have clients who, not so much in the music business, but in other areas that are constantly coming up with new works. I mean, like on a daily basis, they're doing new designs of particular types of things, and for them to hire a lawyer every single time would just be an inordinate amount of legal fees. And so what I've done is actually done presentations for them where I explain step by step. Here are, here's the first question, second question. Here's how you answer it.
Okay.
But just to summarize, like I think it's the kind of thing that people can get their hands around and can learn how to do it, and can do it for themselves for sure.
So what is the website for them to go to check out the copyright? Is it copyright.gov?
Yes.
Still?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Very nice. Yeah. So guys, definitely look into getting you some legal advice if you haven't gone through copywriting yet. But if you do want to just look at it and go through the questions yourself or try to fill it out yourself, the website for that is www.copyright.gov. And like Adam said, I think the rate now is $85 for a group. So you can register more than one song for that rate, right?
Right. So okay. if you're the Copyright Office gives you different options. If it's a single work, you can register for $65. If it's a group of unpublished works, you can register up to 10 now, and I believe the current rate is $85 to do that. So it goes up periodically. The amount goes up periodically, but it's not. It goes up by $10 to $20 a time.
So I've noticed a lot of new artists, they kind of get confused copywriting with publishing. Their ASCAP or royalties. They think, if I copyright the song, then I'll get paid if it's becomes a hit record, right? And that's not necessarily the case. So can you explain, like, okay, now how do you get paid, which I know that's your publishing, your ASCAP BMI. So let's dive into that side of it and explain
Sure.
the difference of our publishing now versus copyright.
Sure. So publishing is sort of a broad concept, but basically, and people use that term in different ways. But for me, when I hear the term publishing, it's really what is the money that you're making from the song side of the copyright? Okay, so not the sound recording side or the master side, the song side. Okay. In any copyright, whether it's the song or the recording, there's a bundle of rights. For a song in particular, one of those rights is the exclusive right to publicly perform. The function of the performing rights societies, or more specifically, ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC in the United States, is to be a more or less a clearinghouse of that particular right of the song. So the right to publicly perform the musical composition. And what ASCAP and BMI does and CSAC is that they affiliate with writers and composers. More or less what that means is they become licensees of those writers and composers. And what they do is they have a huge stock of hundreds of thousands of songs that they offer licenses to other people to use to publicly perform. So traditionally, what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about like things like radio and TV. Now it's getting more, complex. There's all sorts of ways that you're publicly performing music. And so if you go to ASCAP's website or if you go to BMI's website, you can see all sorts of different kinds of licenses. But essentially what they're doing is they're giving you a blanket license to publicly perform all of the works in their catalog. So as a composer or an author of music, you need to think about how do I get that music into the hands of one of those PROs or public performance rights societies so that they can in turn give them to third parties to use. And what you do is you affiliate, you license them, you sign an electronic agreement with one of these societies. So it's a long-winded way of saying title your songs with one of either ASCAP or BMI, or if you're invited, with CSAC.
Is there advantage of going with either one, BMI or ASCAP?
I really don't think there is. They were sort of built, from the early stages, they were sort of run differently. So my understanding is that ASCAP was more like, it was sort of like it was sort of built by a collective of composers, whereas BMI, it stands for Broadcast Music Incorporated. So it was sort of set up to be more oriented towards radio. But now I think they really, they're not going to pay very differently. They're going to pay on the same schedule. They're going to pay virtually the same amount on a per play basis. So, CSAC, my understanding is that it's a smaller catalog and it's it is an invitation system, so you can't just go, like anybody can affiliate with ASCAP or BMI, my understanding. CSAC is a little differently, like they have to ask you to join. Now, how selective it actually is, I'm not really sure. I think Bob Dylan, I think, is a CSAC. They make a big deal about his affiliation with CSAC. So it's kind of like they are able to maybe take a little bit more time and care on a per writer basis than ASCAP and BMI, who probably have, if they have tens of thousands of authors, if not hundreds of thousands. They have a huge catalog.
Sure. Yeah. So let's talk about the royalty side of your BMI ASCAP. I just want to just throw out a lot of misconception, or this channel here, we want to give you guys exposure to maybe what you don't know or haven't heard before. So a lot of people think, I sign up, I copyright my music maybe, and I might even register it with ASCAP and BMI. and they automatically think, hey, I'm finna make tons and tons of money. Is it possible that that songs and music will not generate money at all? Or is
Yeah.
it more likely that every song would generate money
Mm.
from your pro?
I think it's probably, I mean, overall, it's probably unlikely,
Don't
right?
want to discourage nobody out
Yeah.
there, but
Well,
this is
no, absolutely. I mean, these are all sort of necessary conditions to start protecting your work and making money, but they're not sufficient, which is to say, somebody's got to use that material, and somebody's got to use that material in a way that is significant. Yeah, you can make a lot of money from ASCAP or BMI or CSAC through public performance, but you know, if nobody wants it, then nobody's going to perform it, and you're not going to see any money out of it. If you get a sync on a network television show, you're going to make a lot of money. Prime time network show, that's still big dollars, right? And it can be that mailbox money, right? It can be the money that just comes in every month because they keep running that particular episode with that music in it.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to think about the fact that music supervisors are fairly select in what they're using, and they may not be using your stuff. And if they're not, or if they're using it on a much smaller level, if it's a YouTube thing that runs once and that's about it, then you're probably not seeing a ton of money. It might be a couple grand here or there on a short-term basis, but it's not going to be something that's going to be bringing you huge dollars like every month. And even that is again, somebody needs to use it for you to make money.
Right. And so guys, but I for me, that's been doing it for a couple of decades now. I think the goal, if you're just starting out, just create the best music that you can, stay creative as possible. But these are steps that you want to take to protect yourself. And as you grow in your music career, you will start to develop basically your own catalog. And within that catalog, I think is when you want to start finding ways for your catalog basically to start generating money. And I wanted to say that because a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to create this song, and they get so attached to this one song. And, that might be the one hit song that, we've all been waiting for. But chances are you're going to have to create more than one song. And I encourage you guys to create volumes of songs, create albums, EPs like you have been doing. But just get those songs copyright protected. So if there are license opportunities, especially now in this new generation, like Adam was saying, there's, I think the radio might be kind of getting played out as far as that was the main source of pro. But I think there's more streaming opportunities now coming up. Don't you agree, Adam, that
Sure.
where you can start seeing a little bit of revenue on the back end through the streaming era? So how has the streaming era, has that affected, or is there, because now this is something I was a little confused on, protecting myself, because the streaming came in and then here comes, was it Sound Exchange? What is Sound Exchange? Is that something these guys need to sign up for too, on top of your pro and your copyright?
So Sound Exchange covers, so we talked about the music side of the copyright and then the sound recording side.
Right.
For sound recordings, there's a limited right of public performance for transmissions. What Sound Exchange does is act as a licensee for that limited right of public performance of sound recordings. And so it's really only there also for non-interactive streaming or downloads. So what we're talking about are things like Pandora, something like that, the typical Pandora service where you're choosing something, but you're not selecting it on an interactive basis. You're not saying, I want to listen to this. It's just kind of going similar to like a radio type service.
Would Spotify be included in that?
Not the interactive portion of Spotify. So that's what makes Spotify such a difficult game to run for the owners of the company, because they actually have to license all of them. They can't go to Sound Exchange and use a a quick way of or an easy way of licensing these tracks. They actually have to approach all of the majors, all of the labels, and say, we want to use your music. We want to offer these as interactive streams. So that's not operated through Sound Exchange. But there is some money that comes into Sound Exchange, and it sort of operates in a similar way to the PROs in the sense that it's offering a blanket license for those non-interactive streaming services, and collects money from the users and then distributes it to its members. And as far as affiliation with Sound Exchange, I mean, there really is only one game in town, so you're sort of stuck with Sound Exchange. There isn't that, not like ASCAP and BMI. There aren't competitors or CSAC. There's only one Sound Exchange, and it's sort of a pseudo governmental entity. It's not a privately run, totally anyway, organization. There's like a board with a bunch of different people from labels. But it's a government sanctioned organization.
Gotcha. So for music producers, artists, songwriters, is that something you encourage them to also check off the box?
For sure, yeah. Make sure that you've done everything you can to collect any money that's available to you from Sound Exchange. Sound Exchange does some outreach to people that they feel. There's this term black box money. It's you hear it, in different contexts, but in this context, what happens is Sound Exchange will get money in, and they don't have somebody to pay it to, so they sort of don't know what to do with it, and they try to figure it out. But you don't necessarily want to be at the mercy of somebody else trying to find you. You kind of want to be more proactive and contact them, and that's true of ASCAP and BMI too, because if your songs aren't titled correctly, there's a chance that somebody's using it, and ASCAP is just not for nefarious purposes, although I'm sure they probably make interest on the money they have that they're not paying out, but they just don't know where to pay it to, so they need to know what your tracks are, what your songs are, so that they can pay to you the money that you're owed.
So let's dive into, you do all of that or you don't do all of that, and let's just talk about somebody steals your song. Now, before we got on this call, we kind of you explained to me a little bit the difference between plagiarism and infringement. I think those are two words that I hear a lot in little barbershop talk, music talk with my peers. Somebody plagiarized my song or somebody infringed my song. Is there a difference in those two things?
Yeah, so plagiarism is it's sort of a moral concept. It's the idea that someone's going to act as if they created the music themselves. From a, but it's not something that you're going to sue over. It's not, at least in the U.S. There's not really the ability to file a lawsuit because someone plagiarized. Infringement is a legal concept. Infringement is the idea that someone used your work without authorization, whether they credited you or not. And so, the example to show the difference is, you might be able to rip somebody off, or if you rip somebody off, you can give them all the credit you want. You can say, well, I didn't make this music, and Kris did, but you're still going to be an infringer potentially, but you may not be you're not a plagiarizer because you're not claiming credit.
Is so? Because that kind of takes me to my next thing. You see a lot of cover bands out there, or people streaming now because of COVID. They're doing live concerts. So if they're covering somebody's song, should they say, "Hey, this is somebody's song I'm covering" every single time they sing that song, or they could be in risk? Or how are people getting away with singing a Beatles song on streaming for their online concert? Yeah. Without paying for it, or can they be sued, or how does that work?
Yeah, well, it's possible. I mean,
everybody's doing it.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it. So, like we were talking about, the public performance. The services like YouTube and Facebook Live, they're going to have blanket licenses to perform a lot of the music, or if not all the music that you would want to cover. So the performance in itself is probably, you may be able to piggyback on the license that the services provide or that the services obtain. Where it gets a little bit more complex is that you need to think about the fact that there isn't only that public performance right. There's the right of distribution. There's a right of reproduction. So if you're going to cover a song and you're going to allow it for download, that's a pretty big distinction. So let's take on one hand, you've got a live broadcast. You've got, hey, I'm going to do a live concert performance, and I'm going to perform, sing a Beatles song, could be anybody else's song. You're as long as you are using one of the services like YouTube and Facebook Live, you are at least probably covered for the public performance. But if you're going to record that performance and you're going to let your fans download it, and video on demand really is what I'm saying, then you're getting into territory where there's really no doubt that you need a broader license. You can't just rely on the license from ASCAP or BMI or CSAC. You need a sync license, and that is not something that is, it's not something that's easy to get. You have to go to the publishers and get that license. And yeah, there's a chance that at the very least you will get a DMCA claim against you. If YouTube is a significant outlet for you, you need to worry about the strikes that you're getting against you, and because you don't want to lose your account. Or at worst, you get a letter from Sony ATV saying we're better stop using our music or we're going to sue you. So that's a scary thing to be to get. Now, from is it going to happen? Maybe not. I mean, they might not care, or they might not be on their radar. But if you're making money on it, and
might not be big enough.
Yeah, you might not be big enough. But if you're making money on it and you're a big enough artist, it's quite possible that you get hit with something like that.
So I guess just to overall, without getting into too much detail, if I get on YouTube Live or Facebook Live and I just want to do 2 or 3 cover songs, and what about on the bottom, I'll say, hey, this is my Venmo, my Cash App, if you want to send a donation. Should I be okay? Just chance it, I guess, or?
Well, are you thinking, is it going to be a live broadcast? Or are you going to offer it for on demand, or?
No, not on demand, not download. Just I can't perform live because of COVID right now, so I'm just going to set up a little YouTube Live or Facebook Live in my living room with a guitar, do a couple cover songs, and try to make some donations like I would normally do at a bar or something. But I'm just going to stream it live.
If you're doing a live broadcast, I think that, and you're using Facebook Live or YouTube, I think you're in pretty good shape among everything that you can do. I mean, look, you got to think about the fact that you need to make money, right? So, if this is your livelihood and you need to perform, it's a reasonable idea that a live performance that one sees on the computer or on your tablet or your cell phone is similar to a live performance that you get in any bar or concert venue. And I like to think of it like, if that's all you're doing, then it's similar to that, and the rights that you need to do that come from the venue if you're performing live in a venue, or from your service if you're performing on YouTube or Facebook Live. So if you're doing it strictly live broadcast, I think you're in pretty good shape.
Very nice.
Again, if you're offering on demand, then you're getting into territory that's a little bit scarier, and you probably should be more careful about.
Gotcha. Very, very good information. I hope that clears up a lot of stuff for you guys out there. Let's jump over to trademarking because I know you specialize in that as well. Um, Maybe just kind of decipher a little bit for those who don't know, who might get trademarking confused with copywriting. Like, what is trademarking? How does that relate to people in the industry, artists growing their brand?
So a trademark at its heart is an indication of source. It's like a brand name. So it could be, a name, a logo, the K on your hat, things like Dell. Just you could look around the room, you can see a ton of different trademarks. Apple, Texas Instruments. I have a calculator here. All of my KRK speakers. That's a brand name. And you say the word KRK. So for somebody like you who's in the business and you hear that brand name, the idea is that it presents a certain amount of quality. You know what you're getting, maybe good or bad, but at least you've heard of the brand name. Whereas, as people say, well, it's a generic or it's a no-name brand. They don't know anything about it. So they're less likely to buy it. And the idea of trademarks is that you're protecting someone, or you're protecting your brand against someone from being confused into thinking that what they're doing is related or endorsed or sponsored or affiliated with your brand name.
Mm-hmm. So I know just a little detail in that. So somebody that does music brand name, they can trademark, say, their brand or their logo. But say if somebody else has a water company, a water bottle company, those could be the same brands, but maybe two different trademarks. Is that possible?
Sure. Yeah, it's possible. I mean, when you look at the idea,
called classes, right, or files, or what they call it, different. You have to file different classes, correct, or something like that.
Yeah. Well, yes. So I mean, that's a little bit more. I mean, at its heart, what trademarks are doing are protecting against consumer confusion. Mm-hmm. And the way that the U.S. legal system looks at this is to say, all right, are the goods of one party related to the goods of another party, such that someone would reasonably be confused into thinking that one party's goods are confused. I'm confused as to source, because that's what we want to avoid against. So the idea is that a band or an artist who's performing, that's not really related to, chemicals used in the manufacture of, other products. So because, people aren't running into it in the same context, they're not saying, typically you're not seeing an artist also produce chemicals. It's right. Just not, so they're not related. But you get into it's a little bit more challenging when you're thinking of something like, a similar word that you might be performing as versus another word that is, producing apparel or merch. Because a lot of times artists are not only performing, but they have their own line of merchandise. Right. And so that can get into more tricky scenarios and figuring out, whether you can use it safely without worrying about that other company that's in the business of apparel.
So if there's a rock band out there and they start getting a little bit of buzz and they got some t-shirts out there, they're selling at shows or something, and they find the t-shirt, start selling, maybe they should look into getting that t-shirt or their logo trademark just to protect their brand.
If you're serious, what I like to tell clients is that if you're serious about your business and your brand name, then it's better to start the process earlier in the course of your business. So, and that's true of really anybody from a CPG company, a consumer packaged goods company, to an artist, to a chemical manufacturer, to if you're going to build something, then you ought to look into protection and also making sure that nobody else is using a similar mark for similar services. Because right. You might think that you came up with something yourself, but you're not the first person to think, well, that's a great name for a band. Well,
right.
It's probably maybe 30 other bands who've already thought of that. So
yeah, the key is you don't have to be the first to think of it, but you might want to be the first to react. and protect it. You know, I
Sure. Well,
think
you might. Yeah. Yeah.
so. Let's talk about that because this happens all the time, and we don't have to get into any detail, any specific thing. But say somebody does take your stuff, uh, copyright infringe your song. We see it happen all the time. I think some of the more popular ones that have come out in the media, popular songs, and like I said, we don't have to get into detail because we wasn't there. But we have the Robin Thicke song, Blurry Lines, and a For Real song. I think it was the Katy Perry, Dark Horse song, and there's several other songs. And I think you're seeing it more and more popular now. I don't know why, but what are some steps to take if you go through that? I know we talked about how to kind of protect ourselves, and it's good to get copyrights. And in case this does happen, you kind of get a jump on it. You have a little bit more protection from the government or from the copyright office. But say somebody takes your song, you hear it on the radio. I'm an artist. Like, what are some steps they could take to make sure they're compensated fairly for their work that was stolen?
Yeah.
Or is there anything they can?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say, if you think that someone has infringed your work, I think that you might want to contact a lawyer. Unlike registering your copyrights or even your trademarks, the one area you really don't want to mess around with is sending threats to people, unless you have, the backing of a lawyer, because a lawyer is going to say they're going to give you an opinion on, or they should be able to give you an opinion on the likelihood that this is ever going to go anywhere, or whether you're going to be wasting your time. There's a lot of different, there's a lot of different, if it was as simple as saying, well, that work sounds like my work, then, someone like me, I wouldn't have a job. But there's just a lot of stuff that goes into it. Just as an example, I mean, there's a 3-year statute of limitations for copyright infringement. So you need to think about, when it is that the work was used, and it can affect whether you can recover anything whatsoever, or whether your, recovery will be much smaller. You need to think about timing is very significant. So for example, if someone is, and of course that statute of limitations is a timing issue, but also, you want to think about how fast do I need to act to put the maximum amount of pressure on the user or the infringer, and that's something that a lawyer should be involved with. What are the steps that you need to take to file in the right way a lawsuit, so that you can really stop them as soon as possible. I mean, I know, and I'm not gonna sugarcoat it for anybody. A lot of that stuff can be extremely expensive.
Yeah.
It can be, if you're going to sue for copyright infringement. I mean, something like the Blurred Lines case. I think the judgment at the district court level was something like, some mid 6-figure or 7-figure amount, so $3 million, $7 million. I mean, if I told you that the legal fees for that case were $1 million, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know, but it's quite possible that they were in the millions of dollars. I mean, because you have people who are high-priced lawyers who are fighting tooth and nail, and if you look at what we call the docket for that case, there are hundreds of entries. Every single one of those entries is something that people spent significant, a lot of those entries anyway, are something that people spent a significant amount of legal time to draft and argue over. So they can be extraordinarily expensive procedures. So yeah, I'm not trying to frighten anybody, but it can be very expensive. Get a lawyer if you use your work. Yeah.
Yep. Get a lawyer, guys. Get somebody to assist you so you can focus on creating. Personal experience from that. So just off the top of your head, I mean, you're the guy that deals with this a lot. Is there anything that you want to suggest to an up and coming artist that maybe we missed, that, hey, these are some things you can kind of be doing, some steps you can take on your own, or maybe searching some professional advice to just protect their whole bubble of music career? You know, is there anything you think we missed or uh,
I think we hit
covered?
on a lot of the high notes. I mean,
I think so.
yeah, I think that a lot of people. I mean, don't. I think that a lot of people are like, well, I have to take it, seriously, and I have to treat it like a business, and I think you do, but I think that it's also important that you don't, you realize what your limitations are. I mean, some people are more, sort of paperwork inclined, and some
Hmm.
people aren't. So if you think that you can't do something like, go to the Copyright Office website and file a copyright application, or go to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office and file a trademark application, then don't.
Get some help.
Find some help. There's a lot of resources. For y'all who are in the Texas region, there's an
Hmm.
organization called Texas Accountants and Lawyers for the Arts,
Tala.
and it offers a lot of pro bono legal services, and I think also some accounting services. And there's a lot of lawyers out there, believe it or not, who are excited to help young artists who, or not necessarily young, but sort of up and coming or newer artists who don't have the money to pay for a big legal bill. But it's exciting for younger lawyers too, because they get some experience helping artists out, and but it can be a very helpful thing for artists to find free or very substantially reduced legal services. Um,
Is that do you think every artist, because that was a question I got, does every new artist starting out need to go hire a lawyer?
I don't think so. No, I mean, and really, what are you gonna what are they gonna do for you? It's kind of like, do I need a manager right away? You need a manager when you can afford to have a manager.
When
I
there's
mean,
something to
because
manage.
yeah, you need something to manage. I mean, somebody's got to be. You've got to. You kind of have to do things for yourself for a while until you can't.
Hmm.
And again, what is your personal capacity? Do you have the wherewithal to go online and do things like paperwork? Maybe you don't, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't. I'm not a professional musician. I can't. I'm not. I'm not going to pretend that I am. I know my limitations. So don't stress out about not being able to do that stuff. You're ahead of the game if you know that stuff is there or out there, and you keep it in mind. Sort of like, okay, need to think about this at some point. And when you have the time and you have maybe a little bit more scratch to throw around, maybe you hire somebody. Just like if you have that, if you're making money on your performances and you need somebody to help you, in the stages of your career to sort of get you to the next level, that then it makes sense to have a manager. But before that,
Right.
there's nothing to pay them with.
I think I think we covered everything. Thanks. That was a really good answer there. I'm gonna circle back around to something we talked about a little bit earlier, and that's protecting yourself. Should an artist, if an artist, because we see this a lot of times, a producer links up with the a producer links up with the artist, and they start working. Maybe they create an album or EP together or something like that. Should there be some type of paperwork or agreement between that producer and artist? Because I see a lot of people, they do it, they don't have anything, and then down the line there could be some confusion. Uh, and it doesn't have to. Maybe they should get a lawyer to draw up something, or is there anything they can put on the back of a napkin just to write down? But I guess my main thing is, should an artist and a producer have some type of agreement working together? I know there's producer deals, like when you get bigger, and I mean, there's terms for that, but just your general scope on that. What's your thoughts?
Anytime you're working with somebody, on a project, you should get something in writing. I mean, that's just sort of a basic idea. It's always better to get something in writing than to leave it to chance later, because everybody's happy and until they're not, and then they're saying, well, I own this and I expect a certain amount of money from this or whatever. But yeah, it's a good idea to get something in writing if you can.
Hmm.
It might not always be feasible to get it done, but
Yeah, well, I guess, and with that, guys, just a basic, just a fair, without all the details. it should be a 50-50 split. You know, if the producer does the song and the artist is writing the song, well, I'm not gonna say it should be a 50-50 split, but you know, it should be some type of agreement to where the producer should be compensating for what he does and the songwriter, just whatever you guys agree on, right? I'm assuming that's a 50-50 without all the
Well, it depends on
details.
what kind of, I mean, as I'm not gonna, you do a lot of production, so for
Right.
you, when I'm representing you, it's 75. But no, I mean,
There you go.
it depends on what kind of like, if you're doing, um, I think, people use the term producer. I mean, if you're a producer who someone's coming in with like a half finished track and they're like, help me record, and also, by the way, put together all of this other stuff that I need you to do to make it commercial ready, then you're doing a lot more than, somebody who is hired. I mean, I work with a lot of producers and bands and producers. I mean, when they go into the studio, they've written all their material, they've rehearsed it. The producer is
It's more engineering than
more engineering,
Yeah.
But I don't want to take away, because there is an art form to that too. Certainly, like, engineering is very significant, but they're not writing. They're not really taking a half finished song to a real finished product. They're taking fully formed songs and making sure that it's recorded properly and that it's sometimes mixed properly, and sometimes they're doing mastering, but they're doing less maybe than someone like you might be doing, or another producer who's really writing
hands-on.
Yeah.
Helping out with the top line melodies, maybe the chorus.
Sure.
Need some lyrics here.
Yeah.
Hey, let's arrange this here. There is a lot that goes into producing, and thank you for clearing that up. 75% over here.
Well, I mean, like,
Nah.
yeah.
Well, man, I think that's, I mean, guys, like, this is the information I want to get out. I mean, we're not trying to sugarcoat anything, but at the same time, we're not trying to discourage you. We want you to jump out here, get in there, get your feet wet, and start creating. And don't be afraid of, the fears of what you might hear or what could happen, the worst that could happen. I mean, these things, things can happen. People can take your stuff, and, but for the most part, we've given you a lot of great information for you to protect yourself. I mean, it's like a house. You can build that beautiful house, decorate it, but you want to probably get some type of insurance on the house just in case a tornado comes, a fire comes, blah, 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 all this comes. You still going to have to go through the process if the house burns down, but it's going to be a lot easier if you have some type of insurance before the fire, comes. It's easier to put that fire out. And I think that's the same thing. Adam's given a lot of, great information for you to take back and run with. If nothing else, you can get on Google and get a more extended research of what he's talking about. But I suggest you guys, if you're growing your music career and you're starting to seeing traction, people enjoying your music, maybe you're starting to make a little bit of money from your music, definitely look into copyright your song. Get signed up with the pro organization. Ask Apple BMI. If you have a brand or logo or anything like that that's starting to generate that you believe in, looking to get in that trademark. And if you have any other legal or need more advice or more assistance, definitely reach out to a music attorney in your local area. And like, or yeah, just look out to look to Adam. I mean, I don't want to get too personal, but you've done international stuff, so you're based in Austin, but you've worked with clients from all over the world. So Adam, thank you for taking time this morning to just share the wisdom and your knowledge on the KeyZ Method. We really appreciate it. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Until next time, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the KeyZ Method. You've been listening to 14 Keys of Thinking Like a Pro. Look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Stay creative. Peace.